Hello everybody, how are you? Happy Thursday. I just want to make sure I'm connected. There we go. So happy Thursday. I am Pia from Stitches and Scraps, and this is Lunchtime Live, episode 82. For those of you who are new here, Lunchtime Live is basically my video newsletter for Stitches and Scraps. So I'll be telling you about everything that's going on the blog, what I'm working on, all of that. And then we end each session with a tutorial of, like a mini tutorial of a stitch or something like that. This year, what I've decided to do is a stitch of the week. So we're actually going to be demoing a specific stitch every week, and we're alternating between knit and crochet. So today we're going to be doing the knit bubble stitch. And then I'll show you actually three different ways to make the special stitch that makes this work. It's actually a really easy pattern. It's much easier than you might think looking at the texture. But first, let me tell you everything that's going on Stitches and Scraps. So the main thing for this last week is the main thing for this year is the bag along, but the main thing for this last week is the new bag for bag number 2 for the bag along. And it's got, I chose to use a cord lock to hold the cords, so you can just slide it like this, but if you choose not to, you can also, tie a bow in it. But then this is the bag, and it's just a project bag. It's not very huge. It makes a good small purse, or it'll fit like a skein of yarn and a hook and some tools, And I did flatten the bottom of it by using a piece of cardboard. And in the pattern I wrote that you can use a Tupperware lid if it's the right size, or a piece of plastic mesh. They even come in circles. And this is a 6-inch circle, so it should be easy to find. But I cut this out of a cardboard box. So that flattens the bottom. If you don't use that, then you get more of a, let me put something in it so that you can see how it, there, you get more of a rounded bottom that, it's just your traditional bucket bag kind of a fit, right? But I like putting something rigid in the bottom because it holds it nice and flat. I got the idea from my grocery bags. They all came with a little insert for the bottom that makes them stay nice and flat, and I liked that. So I decided to use that for this bag. So this is the bottom of the bag, the bottom circle. It starts with the bottom circle and then it works up along the sides. The first tutorial for the bag along, for this episode of the bag along, will come out next week. So if you're new, what the bag along is it's a crochet along that we're doing all year. There's going to be a new bag every 2 months. So this is the second bag, and along with each pattern, there's a giveaway, and there are at least 2 tutorials, if not maybe 3 or more. So the first tutorial comes out next week, and it'll be for that bottom, and I'll go through the chart and stuff with you too. Because there's 2 different kinds of charts for the pattern too. But I'll go over that with you in the next tutorial. And the giveaway has been open for a little while, so make sure you go check that out. So you're maybe asking me, where do I go check that out? Well, if you look in the description on this video, you will see a link to a blog post. That blog post has a list of everything I'm talking about in this video. So all the links are there. Anything that I'm mentioning today, if you want to find it, go there and look down at the bottom of that post. There's a list of all the links. So the pattern, the giveaway, all of that is there. It is sponsored by We Crochet. This one used 5 different colors of We Crochet Brava yarn, and I got the Brava Minis. Here's another one that I've been using, the Brava Minis, because they're cute little small skeins with only 25 grams each. So they're perfect for a project like this. You can use the whole skein. So that's basically what's going on this week and next week. Is I'm working on that, that pattern just came out. I'm working on the tutorial. I actually got to join We Crochet on their Facebook page for a live video yesterday to talk about the bag along. And they have some promotions going on this month for National Craft Month. So they were talking about that, and that was a lot of fun. So you can check that out on the We Crochet Facebook page. And then you can find all the links for the bag along again in the link in the description on this video. The other thing, hi Beth, good morning, how are you? The other thing for next week, of course, is for the Lunchtime Live, the stitch of the week next week will be the crochet shell stitch. So we did V-stitches last week, and next week we're doing the shell stitch. And shell stitch is actually kind of a catch-all term for a bunch of different types of stitches, shell and fan. So we'll talk about fans versus shells, and different ways you can make a shell stitch basically next week for Lunchtime Live. This week for Lunchtime Live, we are talking about the knit bubble stitch. So let's get into that. This is the knit bubble stitch. It's got this cool texture that almost looks quilted or like a pin tuck kind of a texture to me. I don't know if I used that word correctly, but that's what I think of when I think of this. So, and the one thing I really like about it too is the back looks so pretty as well, right? And it may look like this is a super complicated stitch. It is absolutely not. It's almost pure stockinette. So stockinette, if you remember, is knit on the front side and purl on the wrong side, so that everything looks like knit stitches on the front. Really actually a boring chart because there's almost nothing on it. So looking at the chart, you'll see there are rows and rows and rows of stockinette, and then every 6 rows, okay, we do this stitch here, which is a knit 4 below. And what that is you drop down by 4 rows and you knit into the stitch 4 rows below, and that makes the little pucker. That is all you need to do to get these little puffs, okay? The little bubbles. So this is the knit 4 belows, and we stagger them to get the staggered puffs that you see. See how that one's between those two. So that's the gist of the stitch. The rest of this, it's all stockinette. I started on the wrong side. You can actually start with row 2 if you want to, but I started on the wrong side, so everything is purl, knit, purl, right? Because wrong side rows are purl, and then you get the pattern row. And then purl, knit, purl, and then you get the pattern row. So I've already knit up the first 5 rows because you guys don't need to see me do just plain knits and purls. I'm sure you all know how to do that. So I have done here 5 rows of stockinette. So you can see my cast on edge, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rows of stockinette. I'm on the right side and I'm ready to start row 6, which is this pattern row. So the pattern repeat, the way I'm doing it and the way it's most commonly done, it's a 4-stitch repeat for the pattern itself. This is the repeat, okay? If you're doing it in rows and you want it balanced on each side, you need to add 3 extra stitches so that this is centered, okay? If you're doing it in rounds, you can actually just do a multiple of 4 stitches because you go around and, so you'll do these 4 and then you'll do these 4 again and then these 4 again, and it'll work because it's in rounds, right? So I'm doing rows. So I've done 11 stitches, which is 2 times 4, so a multiple of 4, plus 3. So it's 8 plus 3. So here we go. I'm going to knit 3 stitches and then do that 4 below stitch, right? So I'm knitting 1, 2, 3 stitches, okay? Now the goal of this next stitch, and I'm going to show you the scary way first. This is how I like to do it if I have a very fuzzy yarn that is not going to slide and slip away from me, okay? I'm going to show you 3 or 4 different ways to do this. So the way I like to do it for a fuzzy yarn that I feel very in control of, we're going to take this stitch off and we're going to drop it down 4 stitches. So there is 1, 2, 3, and 4. And now notice this loop's not going anywhere, right? This yarn's pretty fuzzy. I have 4 bands here of stitches that I've dropped it down, right? And now I'm going to work into this stitch that's 4 rows below. I'm going to stick my needle in just like that, okay? Notice my needle's going under all of those ladders, okay? And then I'm going to knit through that stitch. All right, let's see that one more time. So I knit 3, right, to get to the next. Here's my repeat. So I did that drop down. Now I knit 3, and then I'm going to do that 4 below again. So knit 3. Okay. Now I'm going to do that same thing, but I'm going to show you a different way to make the knit stitch. So if I still drop it down, 1, 2, 3, 4, okay? If you don't feel comfortable making the knit stitch like this, you can actually put this stitch back onto the left needle and make sure that all of those bars are on there too. Okay, so now that whole thing that I dropped down is on the left needle. And now you can go into all of that and knit it like you would, you know, with 2 needles, and that might be a little easier for you. Okay, but the gist is the same. You've dropped down 4 rows and you're knitting 4 below. So now I'm going to knit 3 to the end. Okay. And now you can see that these knit 4 below stitches have kind of pulled everything together and made the center bobble here puff up. Okay. So that's the general gist of it. I'm going to do 5 more rows of stockinette, so you'll have to bear with me for this. And you can see how it puckers at the back too, right? You may find that it tries to do this, and you can just stick your thumb in it and push it out, and it'll be fine. So now we're going to come up to this one. So I'm on the wrong side row, which means I'm purling every stitch. So I purl 11. Then I'm going to show you a couple different ways. When I'm saying there are different ways to do the knit 4 below, they all have the same effect. They're just different ways to manage the yarn. So like if you have a slippery yarn that, I'm going to switch to my face. You guys don't need to see me knit and purl. If you have a slippery yarn that is going to get away from you if you try to drop down the stitches, or, you know, if you just don't like to take your stitches off of your needle, I'm going to show you all the different ways, depending on what yarn you're using, how you might want to manage that yarn. While I knit this up, are there any questions? It takes me a little while to get the 5 rows in here. I'm on row 2 now. Just pop any questions in the chat, and I will be back shortly with another knit 4 below for you. Silence. It's so rare for me to shut up that long. I'm trying to think of what else is going on. Really, it's been pretty slow over here. I've been thinking about doing a sock knit along. I don't know if you guys are interested in that, but I'm thinking for later in the year of doing a sock knit along. And what prompted this is that I got a box from Annie's. Annie's has kit clubs. Did you guys know this? Annie's has basically themed kit clubs where you can sign up and get kits to make stuff. And they've got one for socks. They've got a knit kit club for socks. And I love knitting socks. I don't know why, but I just do. And so the person who runs the kit club, she sent me one of the kits, right, to make a pair of socks. And I haven't had a chance. It's just been so busy. Life just gets busy sometimes, you know, but it's just been so busy around here. I haven't had a chance to even break it open and cake up that yarn. It's still in the hank. But I do intend to show you guys the yarn and pictures of the socks and all of that, and I'll do a full review. But I'm running behind on it, and they've got a special going on right now just till the end of the month where you can get free shipping. So I don't think I have that link in the blog post right now, but I will pop it in there. Let me just see. I think I'm done here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yes. Okay. So I will pop that link in the blog post too for you. I posted it on Facebook this morning, but check that out if you're interested in any of the kit clubs. They have knitting and crochet, so it's not just knitting. Okay. So there are 5 more stitches of stockinette, or 5 more rows of stockinette. And you can know that you're in the right place, first of all, because you're on the right side of your fabric, right? And you see this stitch right here? You see all those strands pulled into it? That was your knit 4 below. So you can start there and count up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so I know I've done 5 rows since I did that stitch. So now I'm ready to do row 12. Okay, and row 12 is basically staggering. So instead of making 3 stitches before I do the knit 4 below, I'm just making 1 stitch. So I start with the 1 stitch, and now I'm going to do the knit 4 below a different way. This works especially well if you have a very slippery yarn, because the stitches will pull themselves out and you don't need to worry about it. But what you do is you count down 4, like this is stitch number 1 technically, right? But count down 4 V shapes and go into the 4th one. So 1, 2, 3, 4, right? So I'm going to go into this one. I'm finding that V right there. That's the 4th one. And I'm just sticking my needle into that. Okay. Now I can drop this from the top and pull these out, right? And my needle has held that stitch in place. Okay. And I can just knit it or transfer it to the other needle just like we did before. But I can knit through that stitch, and there is my knit 4 together, or sorry, not knit 4 together, knit 4 below stitch that way. Let me knit 3 and I'll get to the last one here. You can do that same technique without bothering to drop down before knitting it if you have a slippery enough yarn, okay? Now, as far as placement, when you get to the knit 4 below stitch, make sure you're in the center of the bubble from the last time, right? Like here's my knit 4 belows last time. So this is the center stitch of that bubble. So I know I'm in the right place. But okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, I can just stick my needle in there without dropping anything. I can knit this, right? I can just knit this. Now I can drop the stitch just like I would after knitting a normal stitch. And then if my yarn's slippery enough, it's going to fall out on its own. If it's not, I can just pull on the yarn a little bit and those stitches come right out. Okay, so whatever way is easiest for you, the point is you have to drop down 4 stitches and knit into the stitch below. And then when I go, let's see, I've got one more repeat here. I go to the end and I go 1, 2, 3, 4, knit into that. Oop, knit into that, really. Okay, I cannot knit for some reason. Here we go. Okay, knit into that, take that off. Notice I'm not even pulling on it this time, because by the time I turn this around and I get to that stitch, it will have dropped. Okay, there you go, it's dropped. So it's not that, you don't have to worry that much about dropping those loops, because they're going to fall on their own if your yarn is even remotely slippery. And if you have a really slippery yarn, it'll fall even faster. But here are my knit 4 belows, and that's what makes the bubbles. So let's talk about variations, because I love to talk about variations. This is the most common stitch count that you use, okay? Everywhere that you look online, this is what you're going to see. Things you can do to this. I already talked about working in the round. You don't need these 3 extra stitches, right? You can also make your bubbles bigger. You can make them wider by adding more stitches between your knit 4 belows, right? So I could do 5. You want to do an odd number so you can stagger it well. But instead of 3, you could do 5. So that makes it a multiple of 6 stitches instead of a multiple of 4. You could also change the number of rows. And what I might do is, if I'm changing the stitches, I might also change the rows, because if you change the number of stitches, you make your bubbles wider. If you do that too much, your bubbles are going to look kind of, you know, wide and flat. But if you also change the number of rows, now you just get bigger bubbles that are still sort of square shape. So I might go, instead of a 4-stitch repeat and a 6-row repeat, or actually a 12-row repeat, I might go 6 stitches instead of 4, and then add another 2 rows as well, or add another 4 rows or something like that to change the shape of your bubble. So you can do all of that. You can add edging stitches. Like I said, you can actually get rid of row 1 if you want and start right from here. I wouldn't do that if you're starting from a cast on row, because that means this 4 below goes right into your cast on row, which is a little annoying. But If you're starting from another pattern and you want the first bubble to hit right at the bottom, you can eliminate row 1. Or if you're starting on the right side of the work and you need that way. So there's different ways you can change it up, but that is the basic bubble stitch. Were there any questions on that? Otherwise, I will just say goodbye. Have a great weekend, and I will see you all next week. Bye.